US TV upfronts has been taking place recently. What have you seen from that? What were your expectations, and have those been borne out in terms of the arrival of programmatic and ad tech techniques into the upfront market?
Well, it's time will tell. I think that how the upfront market trades will be known in the coming weeks. From what we've seen, last year's softness in the upfronts is leading to a lot of new behavior this year. So we're seeing a tremendous kind of increase in the number of over-the-top solutions coming out of the major content producers as well as distributors. People like Sling TV, which is coming out of Dish Network, HBO's own properties, CBS's efforts, a lot of different programs to understand how people migrating away from traditional distribution like cable companies is going to affect content consumption. And I think if you look at the reach curves on major traded audiences, there's some real reason for concern with major television. I think what we've seen and where we tend to play into it is how does kind of the digital equivalent of television, the high-end premium distribution of TV content, complement consumption on traditional television. And that's really where we see the trends playing out versus kind of TV collapsing as an industry. TV's, we believe, fantastic and probably the best reach vehicle ever created in terms of media.
So not just incumbent TV networks, but also now telecoms providers. Big news recently with Verizon's proposed acquisition of AOL, interpreted as a big deal for programmatic and video. What do you think that says about the state of this emerging sector right now?
It's an exciting time. I think there's nothing to take away from, for people like us, but also the industry, that it's an exciting time, and oftentimes threats to existing traditional business models oftentimes spur an innovation, and I think we're seeing that in spades. I think for us as a company, being involved in a sector, having built a company that's just about operating in convergent video, playing in this time, in this sphere is fantastic. I think it's, whether it's for our agency partners or whether it's for our enterprise partners at major cable companies, MVPDs, distributors around the world. The change is exciting. Scary at times, but the opportunities are pretty great, and it's pretty clear, to us at least, that the next year to 3 years are probably going to be where the chess pieces get moved and kind of the winners are defined. And they're big chess pieces kind of being played in a land of giants. And you have the likes of major established companies like News Corp, as well as major companies in the form of Google and Facebook, as well as the major players like WPP and Publicis and Omnicom, all playing to see how that market's going to play out. And it's, being in the center of it and being a technology in that is an incredibly exciting time.
So we know that programmatic was adopted first in the US and first by display. But when you look internationally, outside of the US, how do you see the rollout and the adoption in different regions around the world? Who's ahead in rollout? Who's yet to catch up?
Well, it's interesting. In terms of television and its kind of blending into convergent video, television and digital video combining, we've seen a much greater adoption outside the US than in the US. I think the US adoption is just starting to begin right now. A lot of that relates to the way those markets are traded. A lot of it relates to the overly constrained amount of supply in the television space outside the US. But we've seen the UK market be an incredibly big adopter of digital video as a complement to TV. Australia, Canada, Germany, Spain, France, all markets for us that have been kind of early adopters. And by early adopters, we're talking 3-4 years ago when it started. Our business, just as one example, is north of 50% of our business is international. And that is driven by the fact that more than 50% of our revenue comes from TV budgets. And you're talking, as I mentioned earlier, in the land of giants, you're talking big numbers. So 3, 4, 7% of a TV budget makes very big numbers very quickly.
What accounts for that difference then in a market like the UK versus the US? What are some of the reasons for that greater
adoption? For us, there's been a more of a willingness to kind of question some of the traditional upfront versus scatter market TV approaches. And so you've had people who've been quite innovative, quite frankly, and willing to kind of push the boundaries in terms of the way that the markets were traded. From a media buyer and a seller perspective. You've had a sales community in terms of the media and the content owners who've been willing to dive into the programmatic space a lot more quickly. You see that with consortiums like Laplace Media in France, and you're seeing that in a number of markets outside the US, where we haven't seen as much initial bold action out of the North American businesses, and I would say largely because those are enormous businesses and there's a lot of well-entrenched behavior that exists there. And those markets operate with a tremendous amount of trust between a small group of people. And I think it'll take time before that type of movement happens in North America, at scale at least.
What about the emerging mobile video opportunity? How do you see the introduction of that, and where is that different from somewhere else?
I mean, it used to be that, I kind of go say it used to be 3-4 years ago, mobile was a driver of the Asia Pacific markets for us, largely because you didn't have massive PC distribution and most internet connectivity was coming through mobile devices. And that was true of China, that was true of Japan, even markets like Australia for us. What we've seen over the last several years, and especially this year, maybe the last 18 months, is everything has really become mobile. So it's really hard to make a definition between PC or tablet or mobile phone. Those devices have all kind of morphed into one, and the major form of distribution for digital video is quickly becoming mobile. So it's not that people are sitting down to watch Game of Thrones on their PC, they're oftentimes watching it on a tablet, picking it up on a mobile phone. So for us, you have to really treat them. It used to be for companies in the technology space, being able to do things across devices was a unique differentiator. To now, it's a cost of entry.
So Cannes is coming up, increasingly a mecca for ad industry people and increasingly for ad tech people as well. What conversations are you expecting to have there? What do you think some of the themes are going to be this year?
I think the changes going on with the traditional television business and how programmatic technologies are coming in and participating in it will without a doubt be a major conversation. It'll be a place where we announce a number of deals in that space. I think it will be a conversation that many of the biggest players will be talking about as well. For us also, it's an opportunity to talk to our major enterprise clients. So for us, it's an opportunity to talk to our major agency partners, but also on the supply side of the industry, the sell side of the industry, our major enterprise clients are embracing programmatic technologies and how they sell. How do they engage with the demand side, the agencies who want to buy and exchange programmatically in a way to kind of more fluidly tie together. And so that'll be an interesting conversation I think you'll see play out through a lot of the panels and debates.
Cannes is an event that historically has celebrated creativity in advertising. We're also now seeing the arrival of companies, perhaps like your own, that are ad tech companies introducing scientific techniques to advertising targeting. How have you seen Cannes change over the years?
It's interesting because I actually come from a creative agency background, so I've seen kind of both sides of that coin. I think it has changed. I think it's become much more business and much less of a social activity. I think Cannes, especially as it relates to the major media companies, the major agency holding companies, has become a great opportunity to solidify their global relationships, visit with their global partners, and oftentimes explore kind of big announcements about new deals that they want to push forward in the year ahead. Historically, it was much more about celebrating the work that was done in the previous year from a creative standpoint. Now it plays a much bigger business development role for some of these companies.